Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a really great time. Welcome to this session, which is called Education and Training Technology Trends in 2022. My name is Pete Sharma, and I'm an author, a teacher, and a teacher trainer. These are some of the books that I've co-written, mostly about using educational technology. I'm speaking to everybody from Rochester over here in the UK, and I have very nice memories of last time I was in Mexico City in 2017. The aim of this short talk is to provide an overview of some of the key trends in educational technology. So we'll explore 5 areas and then look at 5 key words. And I'll finish off briefly with 5 tips for navigating the digital ecosystem. So let's begin with the first of the 5 areas. This one is AI, or artificial intelligence. We'll then look at AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, adaptive learning, and finally, hybrid learning. When you think of AI, artificial intelligence, maybe you're a little bit like me, grown up with science fiction films, and we always think of very intelligent robots or computers taking over the world, becoming so intelligent that they're more intelligent than us humans. Of course, it's not that simple. AI can simply be defined like this. This is just from Wikipedia, intelligence demonstrated by machines. And there's a lot of confusion in this area. And it's best to say that something like this consciousness and intelligent machines, this doesn't really exist in today's world. This is general AI. But what is developing very, very quickly are domain-specific areas. So can a computer beat a human being at chess? Absolutely, very much so. So we first have to make that important distinction. And if we move into education, a few years ago, Longman wrote an important paper about AI, Intelligence Unleashed. And this suggests that AI will really change our world as educators, although they don't see a future where artificial intelligence actually replaces teachers, which maybe is good news. I'd just like to point you to this wonderful talk by Kai-Fu Lee, which is a TED talk that you can easily access, called How AI Can Save Our Humanity, where he talks about how AI and us humans can coexist. So have a think about the end of this sentence. AI is massively transforming our world, but there's one thing it can't do. Have a think about that. Write your answer down. It's a pity you can't email your answers across to me now, but compare it to his talk, and he says it can't love. So when we're thinking about which jobs will disappear, if you go to the talk, he does a very interesting graph where on the left you have very repetitive jobs and on the right creative jobs. And I always thought, great, okay, teaching is quite creative. But what's interesting is he adds another line where the jobs at the top need compassion and the jobs at the bottom don't. So clearly the repetitive jobs without compassion, those will disappear. But look where teacher is, right near the top, and homeschool teacher, which is what's happening at the moment, a lot of remote teaching. So that's extremely interesting. In the future, maybe the AI will be doing a lot of the teaching work, but always wrapped in the love that humans can give. Teachers do provide that. And the talk finishes with this wonderful statement. Don't you think we're going to need 10 times more teachers to help our children find their way to survive and thrive in this brave new world? So AI is very, very much a buzz term and a current trend. Let's move to the next trend. This is AR, or augmented reality. So just think about how the world changes the moment that you look at something through the screen of, for instance, your mobile phone or your iPad. And clearly things change. Some of the things that change that because of overlaying that digital information or looking at it through a screen can be seen in the next slide. And we're very familiar with games like Pokemon, and our younger learners know all about Snapchat. I certainly don't, but this is all AR, augmented reality. And in order to prepare for this talk, I visited the BET show. That's the British Educational Training and Technology show in London. And there you can see a lot of the new materials now. You not only have the printed page, but you can look at the printed page through the screen of a laptop, a tablet or a smartphone, and you can see that little person come alive jumping off the page. And so AR is certainly part of what's happening at the moment. Let's move now to adaptive learning, and this is a very nice definition here from Philip Kerr. Adaptive technologies capture a learner's interactions with the software, and algorithms determine the next step in the learning program. So this is something that we're already familiar with in, for instance, placement tests, where if you do a test on a computer and you make a choice, if you choose correctly, then the computer will adapt and give you another question. But if you don't choose correctly, the computer will go in a different direction. And so that's helped us over the years with placement testing. And also when we ask our students to review their language using apps, vocabulary apps, for instance, this also adapts to what the students remember, and then the software will give a new word to you to review after a particular space of time, depending on how much you forget it. So adaptive learning is certainly around, but I would say we must be very careful with these algorithms that are making, if you like, choices or decisions. When I bought a book, The Rough Guide to Peru, I got a message from the supplier which said, "You read this, we thought you'd like this." And of course, the algorithm suggested another book on Peru. And if you think about it, that doesn't have any common sense at all. I've already got one book. Why do I need another book? Algorithms aren't thinking, they're programmed. So many of the apps around for practicing foreign languages are only able to produce the most crazy examples, which have been highly criticized by teachers. Let's move on now to VR, or virtual reality. And you can see from this slide that it's been around for quite a while in lots of different guises. It's very big, of course, in many, many areas of life, training pilots, training surgeons. They can feel the knife going in. You just put on your headset. And in language teaching, there are 3 levels of virtual reality. The first one is a very low level. This is where you look at a video on YouTube, for example, or you buy Google Cardboard and drop your smartphone in. So there's a lot of great experiments going on in language teaching where students are putting on these very cheap headsets. As what's expensive, of course, is the smartphone. Then there's a mid-end experience that you can see on this slide, which is coming into our shops now, and people are buying more and more of these things. And the high end is really amazing, where you actually do believe that you are inside this this virtual world. So VR is around, and it is influencing what we do. There is another route into VR, which I don't know very much about at all. That's the gaming route, and a lot of gamers, of course, are very used to putting on these headsets. So what it means for language teachers, of course, it's still very early to say, but certainly if you go to a tech fair, everybody is going crazy about these VR headsets. I have very mixed feelings about them because there are so many different contexts. For instance, self-study programs where you go into a virtual world and you choose an answer. They also rely on speech recognition, and they're often done a long way away from a teacher. And so students often struggle with these things, but there is no teacher around to help them. I myself have a smartphone and a headset, but they don't talk to each other, and I don't have the necessary technical backup. So VR is certainly developing in lots and lots of ways, and it's very exciting, but at the moment it's also quite divisive. Some students have access, but many students don't. Let's move on now to the final area that we're looking at, which is probably one of the hottest topics at the moment, which is hybrid learning. And you can see there a very, very high tech variant of hybrid learning. It's probably from the Harvard Business School, where the teacher is there with the remote students appearing and all the technologies in place, but the teacher is in a classroom with her normal students delivering a lecture. And I'm sure that there is a lot of technical backup for this kind of setting. So, hybrid learning. 2 years ago, everybody knows we had this amazing, life-changing pandemic. And I would say before the pandemic, we very much followed the TPAC model. So a teacher would know a lot about the content of a course. The teacher would know a lot about the pedagogy, how to teach that content. So the technology was just there to help, to enhance the course. In other words, to some extent, the technology was optional. And that, I think, has been the big difference that the pandemic has made. That nowadays, teachers often don't have the possibility to say, I'd rather not use any technology, because the technology is at the heart of what they're doing, and it enables them to deliver the class. So this is now no longer an option, which is very interesting. So how has the pandemic affected you as an educator or as a teacher? For me, I have never taught a hybrid course, but I have taught now a lot more what is known as virtual blended courses, where the students have the asynchronous learning platform, but my classes are live, usually using Teams or Zoom, for example. Those are very popular tools in teaching. So it's a mixture of asynchronous and synchronous delivery, but everything is online. But what you see changes from teacher to teacher. On the left, you can see what I see when I teach my university students, and it's a lovely view, isn't it? All those students engaged. But here was another course I taught, and nobody had their camera on. And even though as a teacher, I wanted to say, please, turn on your camera, that wasn't the case. And it was very interesting that in the second screen, I think that's really difficult and demotivating for teachers. But it's part of what's happening at the moment. Some of the students don't want to allow you to see into their private spaces and so on. So it's a very interesting thing where context is critical. So let's look at what hybrid is. Here you can see it's this instructional approach combining face-to-face, so classroom teaching, with online learning. But what's critical here is that each session is offered in person and synchronously. That's really, really vital now, because hybrid has changed its meaning over the years. At first, it just meant 50-50, 50% classroom, 50% online. Now it means together, and that's really important. Hybrid instruction, teaching your students in class and also saying hi to everybody that's attending remotely. So I have another question for you guys. Do you want to do this? As a teacher, I'm absolutely sure that I don't really want to do this. I don't feel comfortable talking to my students in class and remembering to also equally address the students participating from afar. So, is hybrid proactive for you, or is it a reaction? If it's proactive, many educators actually want to be inclusive and to give equal opportunities to the students in the class. And if you're ill or you're wearing a face mask, you can still attend the lesson. However, for many teachers, hybrid is the result of ERT, emergency remote teaching. So they're doing it, but they're not necessarily happy doing it. So Beth Alexander, you can see the picture on the right, has been very helpful, drawing diagrams which can help teachers who need to address both of these groups. But the context varies so much that I think it's a pity in language teaching we talk about hybrid learning as if everybody understands the same, and that's very far from the truth. Good news, the technology is changing all the time. This is the latest technology for delivering hybrid classes, and it looks fantastic. It looks complicated, but you can zoom in on the blackboard, you can zoom out the blackboard or the whiteboard or the chalkboard or the interactive whiteboard. You can zoom in on a student and then zoom out. You can zoom in on all the students in the classroom and then come out. This is amazing tech. So it just shows that when the world is under pressure, the technology does develop, and there'll be a lot more interesting trends like this, these kinds of systems. So very interesting. So we've looked there at 5 areas, and we're going to move on now, and I've selected 5 key terms to look at during this short talk. The terms are flexibility, differentiation, personalization, choice, and autonomy. So let's begin. Many teachers now, because of teaching online, use an LMS, a learning management system. There are literally thousands of these, but quite often in language teaching, you've selected a platform with the materials that your learners are familiar with. But you don't have to use the platform in the same way. You could, for instance, use it in an open access way by saying, hi, I'm the teacher. Here's your password. Use your materials whenever you want. That's open access. You've always got access to the podcasts and to the videos. Or you could use it in a lockstep way. This is over on the right. So if you have an 8-week course, in week 1, you can only access week 1 because weeks 2 to 8 are locked down and you can't access them until you've reached the end of week 1. Or you could use them in a targeted way by saying, you could use the LMS in a targeted way by saying to your students, okay, Juan, you really need to work on listening, so I'd like you to do this. Paula, you need to do a lot of work on the simple past ending. So could you do this? And choose different things from the LMS platform for different students. So here we have an example of the technology being used in different ways, so flexibly, but also an example of different students doing different things on the platform at different speeds, at different times of the day. So the platform supporting differentiation. Let's move to the second term, which is personalization. This is always used in tech fairs. The technology will personalize things. And it's worth thinking, I think, that what teachers mean by this word is sometimes slightly different to what people in the computer industry think. So for teachers, maybe finding out what happened to your students yesterday and knowing their names and so on. Whereas in computer terms, personalization is this adaptation, creating a pathway specifically for you. And of course, on the LMS, there are plenty of opportunities, such as the forum here, where you can personalize your lessons. In terms of autonomy, I think to be successful in language learning today, to cope with hybrid and blended, it's very good to be autonomous. Now you can, for instance, write at home and submit your writing to platforms like this, which will judge your writing in terms of an IELTS scale and give you feedback on that. So there's lots of things to help you to become a more autonomous learner, and of course a lot of exercises on your platform for you to do in your own time away from the class to develop this independence. And finally, choice. There are exercises there, but students may choose to do any given exercise in a different way. So one student may for instance, choose to access all the answers immediately and work out why those answers are correct. Another student may decide to go back and do the exercise again and again and again to get a higher mark each time. And all this repetition is helping part of the language learning process. So technology is there to give choice as well. And when it comes to listening, I think there's never been so much choice for students to have. So many fantastic things that you can listen to. Websites with the song lyrics on your phone, just reading through the lyrics at the same time as listening. It's just a wonderful world, I think, for exposure to the language through listening, provided your teacher can help you, for instance, with things like subtitles. Not all subtitles are the same. Some of them are machine generated and are wrong. Others have been written by humans and so on. It's your teacher's job to help you to make those informed choices. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this talk now, and I'm just going to finish off with 5 tips just to help navigate all the crazy, amazing things that are happening. There's so much happening in the world of technology, but these hopefully will help you to navigate the digital ecosystem, everything that's around at the moment. So the first tip is to keep yourself updated. And I think one great thing that you've done is to come along to this experience organized by Richmond. I mean, this is exactly what teachers need to be doing, finding out what's happening. And one excellent source to do that is Philip Kerr's blog. One of my great highlights of my own personal career is doing my diploma with Philip, and he is really a brilliant writer, particularly on things like adaptive learning, but also thinking about that from a critical perspective and not just accepting everything we hear. And that's the second tip, really. It is think critically. Here's a byline from a website. Go to the website and it says the world's #1 way to learn a language. Well, I'll let you guess which is the website, but clearly, is it? And on what's that statement based? And there are so many claims now as to AI empowered, etc., etc., the best way to learn a language. There cannot be one single best way to learn a language. And so we have to cut through a lot of the claims, particularly made by technology itself and at technology fairs, and actually really think critically. It's an age of fake news, and it's one of the skills that we're developing more and more in our language learners. We need always to think very carefully about what the teacher's doing and what the technology is doing. This is something that's always been said throughout the years of blended learning. What exactly is the teacher doing? What is the computer doing? And really knowing what the difference is. And I think that's more important nowadays with all the claims for AI and so on, moving into where the teacher's role is at the moment. Certainly work towards coexistence, and it's quite interesting that with all these things that we have in our home now, like Siri and Alexa and so on, is whether those can be working alongside us. Perhaps in the future we'll be working alongside a digital assistant. So it's our role, of course, to be creative as a teacher, and let the machine do what it does best. So it's great to have a list of questions and then work with your students and decide, hey, which is the best question to ask a teacher? Which is the best question to ask to the AI in the room? Because that is a form of AI. And finally, I think it's good to remember that the teacher is really central to what we do. It's central to our students' learning. So the teacher, even if they're online, is going to be the heart of the learning experience. And I think that that's good news in our profession. The technology is there to support us in what we do, even enable us to do what we do. But we are still at the heart of what's happening. And if students only learn from technology, it will ultimately be a soulless experience. If you put a babelfish in your ear and it translates everything immediately, okay, that's fine. But what about all of the human reasons that we learn language for? So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't speak too quickly there, but just to say that I hope I've given you some kind of picture of some of the key trends which are happening at the moment in educational technology and training. We looked at 5 areas, 5 keywords, and I finished off with some tips for navigating the digital ecosystem. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody. I hope you're having an absolutely great conference. It's wonderful, and I just would like to thank very, very much Richmond for the invitation to speak to everybody, and also to thank everybody involved in supporting this. And I'm going to move now to questions. So thank you very much to everybody. And I'm going to invite questions.
Thanks a lot, Professor, for this wonderful and enriching presentation. I was here following your presentation and lots of ideas just came to my mind. We have here some questions. Allow me to read the first one. This is Anna from Costa Rica, and she's asking, how can we promote critical thinking using a learning management system?
Because I think that the forum on the LMS, where you can post a question and then everybody in the class can think about their answer, and when they're ready they can post a question, is one of the most important reasons why an LMS is essential in learning. Lots of classroom teachers really are used to just teaching in the classroom, but not using this kind of platform. So I think using the platform to help promote critical thinking, the best answer is to use those forums. So imagine you're going to have a class discussion about something. Before the discussion, you could post the discussion question on the LMS and ask people to give you their view. Or, of course, you could do a vote, for instance, just do a vote on the phone. So before the discussion starts, you have everybody's view. And then during the class, you can see if anybody changes their view. So I think the way to do this is set it properly, actually send a question and then ask everybody to not only answer, but to read somebody else's answer and make a comment, because I think that encourages people to open up a discussion and start to think critically about the answer that they don't agree with, and that will help them to change their view. So I think that will be one way, certainly, to help critical thinking.
That surely opens our horizon on how to exploit that LMS and not just as an assignment delivery mechanism. We have another question for you. Can you provide suggestions on how to promote autonomy with our students using an LMS? This is a question from Mexico, and it's Laura Sanchez asking you.
It's there. Just because that LMS is there, it doesn't mean that necessarily you're going to go up there and do things. It's a bit like the gym being there. It's always there, but it doesn't mean you necessarily go to the gym. And I think autonomy, doing things just from the love, is a really super part and a vital part of learning English. So I think one way is to have a special place on the LMS, which you could call a cafe or just a social place, and ask people to do things like, hey, if you've seen a good film, just let everybody know in the class. And so maybe they'll start to appear some links to some really funny, interesting videos, or something that people have watched, and then people will perhaps go up and click on those links and do that extra thing. Because I think one aspect of autonomy is just becoming self-sufficient. And I remember my learning of Spanish, I really did it in the cinema, and anything about films and so on really, really excites me. So another thing you could do would be to set your group with a class reader. And so they're always using their reading book outside the classroom, because extensive reading takes longer, but they could have a place where they could go and discuss the book that they're reading with other people that are discussing the same books. So there's quite a few ways, and perhaps finally flipping, just remembering that because the materials are always there, you could change the order of your lesson and have students work away from the class before they come to the lesson and actually do something at home. And one of those things will be to watch a video. And I remember once asking my students, how many times did you watch the video? I was just interested, and it was really incredible. Somebody said once, somebody said twice, somebody said 3 times, somebody said 4 times, somebody said 5. When somebody said 6 times, it really began to dawn on me that people have totally different speeds and they want to do these things in their own time, and that's a really great way to do it from the LMS.
Well, thank you very much for those ideas, Professor Sharma. On behalf of Richmond, I would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience.
Thank you so much, and really have a great time at the rest of the conference. Thank you and goodbye.
We thank Professor Pete Sharma for his time and participation in the Richmond Solution Experience. It was a great presentation, and I really hope you enjoyed it as much as we did here at the studio.